We want to share with you something that took us years to understand. Finding the right person does not make marriage easy. It just makes the work worth it. If no one told you that prior to getting married, then this is the episode for you.
Welcome to Pen and Ink, a podcast where we discuss marriage and the power of long-lasting love. In every long-lasting relationship or marriage, there will come a time where the easygoing love conquers all starts to fade and something more real is built. It doesn't mean it's a big crisis. It doesn't mean it's a big change. It just means the ease of early marriage, early relationship moves in and evolves into something deeper that requires work and effort. Today, we are going to discuss that shift. All right. Some people call that the honeymoon phase, or they call it the 7-year itch, something like that. What is it? How did we experience this? Let's talk about that a bit.
First off, it's a natural progression of relationships. The love conquers all doesn't last indefinitely. At some point, some of the intimacy, emotional, physical, tapers off a bit. And that is that moment. And people start to question their relationship.
All right. So when did it happen for us? Has it happened yet? We've been married 30 years. For those of you joining us for the first time, I'm Michael. This is Melissa. We've been married over 30 years, and we just share stories of our life and try to illustrate some issues and struggles you might be encountering. So are we still in the honeymoon phase? 30 years in?
No.
All right.
No.
Fine.
And I'm okay with that.
I thought I was, but fine.
I'm okay with that because I've liked the progression. It's worked for it. Has it always been easy? Absolutely not. But it would be weird to stay in the...
Yeah. So when did we first have to really work on our marriage?
I think it was when we bought our first home, about a year into our marriage.
Okay.
There was a lot going on.
What was going on?
Well, that first year we lived in town. So I was still finishing up undergrad.
Okay. So we were super young. We got married in our early 20s?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Got married in our early 20s. You were working at the college, and I still had a year left to complete my bachelor's degree. So things didn't change a whole lot, I didn't think. I really do feel that was a honeymoon phase still.
Makes sense. So about a year in, we bought a house.
We bought a house.
What was going on in our lives at that point?
You were working for the same company, but in a different spot. And I was going to grad school, and we had just bought the house. So we were trying to set up a home together, and we were going many different directions. Whereas when we still lived in town during that 1-year honeymoon period, it was easy. We saw each other at dinner. We usually had dinner at the same time. We got up and left the house at the same time. That was different when it came to once we bought the house and I was going to school 40 minutes this way and work 40 minutes this way. We didn't always connect physically, emotionally, because we missed each other with all the stuff that was going on.
Yeah, I think the phrase is ships passing in the night sort of deal.
That is the phrase.
So we moved from more or less having same schedules, together a lot, sort of knowing the ins and outs of what was going on in each other's day, to a period of time where we didn't have that day-to-day connection. We didn't have that immediacy, which presented a challenge, right? Whereas before I knew if you'd had a good day or had a bad day or a long day or were struggling with something or had something big coming up, when we were in this phase, we were often not as in sync on those sort of things, right? I think that's the gist of how our ease of relationship was first tested, was proximity and time.
And once again, no crisis. All the things that were going on were good things. Graduate school, jobs, they were good things. It wasn't a crisis. It was just an evolution of the relationship.
Right. So if you are at a phase in your relationship where you felt really in sync, everything was going good, and then now all of a sudden it's just feeling a little out of sync, maybe you don't have as much time for each other, well, that's what we're talking about today. How do we get through those phases? Yep. So I think the gap between ease and work is sort of what we're going to talk about, or are talking about.
That is a great way to phrase it.
So let's share a story. We're going to bring in one of our recurring segments that we call Inked Moment. Now, we tell lots of stories about our relationship, but in the Inked Moment segment, we want to share one very concrete, clear memory we have that's on today's topic. Now, I think I'm going to share a story about when I had sort of a epiphany. I like that word. It's not a big word, but it's a fun word.
Yeah.
I basically had the realization that we had sort of been coasting and that we needed to actually lean in on this. So we had been married. We lived in Oregon, got married in Oregon, had our 2 kids in Oregon. And when they were about 3 years old, we moved to North Carolina. And we had set in here, and we moved from my job. You initially were stay at home with the girls. And at this time, girls were about 8 or 9, I think is what we sort of talked about. And you had started to go back into the workforce because the girls were in school now. And everything was good. Like the kids were healthy. They were in school. They were in activities. We were good. My job was good. You were starting to work for agencies. You're a counselor. So as we're giving stories and everything, we're coming from the lens of a very long marriage, but also a therapist background, counselor background. Everything was good. And at my job, I have the luxury of listening to talk radio all day long. And I, at the time, had been listening to this guy who was a big finance guy. And he was all about optimization and frugality and sort of making the most out of what you had. And that was cool and everything. But they changed the radio program to a very popular money guy, which you all will know as soon as I start talking some of the concepts of him. We're not getting into a debate if you like his stuff or not. But he had something that his mindset was, and one of his phrases is, live like no one else so you can live and give like no one else. And the idea was get rid of debt, really sacrifice in certain areas of your life so that you can build something awesome. And I realized, I started thinking about that as like, we were good financially, but we weren't great. We had a good amount of debt. We had
School debt.
Yeah, school debt. We still had some consumer debt, I think, a little bit at that time. And we had the house.
Yeah.
But we were good. Like everything was comfortable. And that sort of challenged us in the financial area of like, well, you could be better if you just worked on it a little bit more. And I think the epiphany part of it was, well, damn, if that's how we're sitting in our finances, what about our other areas of life? Like you and I were good, but had we been working to get better? I don't know. The girls were good, but were we laying the foundation that would really make them good young adults? Like they were good, healthy, adjusted kids, but were we preparing them to be independent adults? I don't know. We were sort of just cruising on a bunch of things. We were comfortable and things were good. Again, the theme of this episode is not crisis. It's just evolution and changing. So I remember coming home, maybe not that exact day, but at some point and throwing some financial changes ideas out to you of like, hey, what if we, and we've got a whole episode where we sort of talked about money and that journey. So tune into that if you want to hear that story. But it also just sort of set on a path of like, hey, can we get better in this area? And can we get better in this other area? And I think it was the first time that I concretely recognized that although things were good, they needed work. They needed to be better if we wanted to hit some of our bigger goals. Remember that day? Remember that week, that time?
I do, because I was like, where's this coming from? And if I remember correctly, you brought home an idea, but it wasn't like the very next day we had implemented anything, but it was something to chew on. But there's something about the comfort that's involved with coasting that I'm sure I was shook a little bit of, well, but things are going well. Why would we?
Right.
Nothing's broken. Why are we trying to change things? So that was my recollection the very first time you mentioned it.
Yeah. I mean, with all these sort of things, the change happens sort of slowly. I'm not one, you're not one who just sort of gets a wild hair and goes at something. We're very deliberate in what we do. And I'm sure we stewed on this for quite a bit. But I think that was the first time that I realized, like, and it's funny, we're 18 years later.
Yeah.
And I still very much remember that office. And I remember that old boombox sort of radio that I used to listen to because the pain in the ass, you had to actually tune the dial and it would go out of tune. Now it's all iHeartRadio and digital, right? Anyway, this isn't the nostalgia episode, but it's one of those like clear recognition memories. So that's our inked moment. And we've just sort of given a little bit of a foreshadow to what I think we should talk about next, which is change. That was a very clear moment of change, not only for me, but ultimately for our approach to a lot of things in our life. And I think these moments where we go from the ease of a relationship to the work of a relationship, they often come around change. We are not the same person. We are not the same couple that we were in our 20s, in our 30s, 40s, now 50s. Like change is something that evolves. So how do we manage change? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, as you were saying, we're not the same people. I'm like, good. There is
Well, I take a little bit of offense at that. I was pretty good in my 20s.
You were
What are you saying?
fabulous, and I was fabulous. However, right? Who wants to be stuck, stagnant, whatever word you want to choose, in the same spot for decades after decades? You start questioning, hey, what's going on here if we're the same people? So it's good. The thing about it is, I think the hard part about the change is noticing and acknowledging that the other person has made a change and adapting to that, kind of like relearning each other. It was just a different phase. For instance, I was thinking about this earlier. I was like, we talked in an earlier episode about, I don't want to call you a hothead, but your emotions came out a lot faster and a lot stronger, intense when we were in our 20s.
Oh, I definitely was a hothead in my, yes. We met each other in high school. And in high school, I was absolutely an emotional hothead, and probably even still into college and then early 20-somethings. And so, yeah, I am definitely much more regulated on that front.
You're regulated, but I had to learn how to, I don't want to say deal with that because that sounds negative. It sounds like a negative. I had to relearn. Before, I didn't have to guess. I knew right off how you were feeling because you expressed it pretty intensely. I knew if you were happy, if you were excited, if you were angry, if you were frustrated.
Right. And let's be clear, my anger was never outwardly directed at you. It was usually like
you never had an anger management program.
Correct, exactly.
But you were more likely to.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Just the way it came out. But no, it was never directed.
I just want to be clear as we're having a relationship discussion here and you're talking about anger and I was like, let's just be clear.
Emotions were closer.
Correct. Whereas
through the years that has changed. You're not. And so I have to pay more attention. I have to be more in tune than I used to. I didn't really have to think about it. I'm going to know what Michael's feeling. Now I have to pay closer attention. And body posture, facial expressions, quiet, not saying something is almost as impactful as saying something for you.
Sure.
What you've become. But I had to relearn that. I was so used to you just telling me what you were feeling, what your thoughts were. And now there's a bit more, it's different.
Yeah, for sure. And you're ironically a little bit different because you used to hold stuff really close to the vest and you would go weeks without me knowing there's any sort of issue. And then it would come out in a flood of tears or whatever. And now you're much more clear where you just tell me what's going on. Now, I was going to say, but a big difference now is that I know when there's something going on, so I'm asking you about it. I'm not letting you sit and stew on it. Whereas before, in my 20s and 30s, I didn't have the awareness that you were dealing with something. And that could be a relational conflict, but it could also be a personal issue you're dealing with or a work-related issue. You would just keep a lot of those.
Like today.
Like today, yeah. Melissa had a very rough day at work today. And we'll get to this, but one of our daily rituals is we take a walk, and it's a very intentional daily check-in. And I mean, I knew in the first 30 seconds when she came into the office after work that she had a bad day, but I didn't jump on it. We wait till our walk, and then it's like, all right, how was your day? Because I know already, so go ahead and release the words because they're coming.
Right, yeah. And I think you even commented, you've been kind of quiet. How was work today?
Yeah.
Knowing where it came from, because that's all I did today was work. So
yeah. So I think recognizing that change is inevitable, the willingness and the intentionality of relearning your partner, growing with them, and then also helping them manage through change. So I was very clear in the inked moment that I wanted to change in an area. And I'm not one who comes to you with big changes that often. So when I come with a big change, it's something that I think relationally you're like, oh, we need to think about this and we need to figure out what our plan is on this. Now, in your relationship, you might be much less consistent with that. You might have a person who has big ideas all the time, and you got to sift through and figure out when is it really something that matters, or is it just the wild hare that they're chasing? Or you might have your own dynamics, but the idea or the importance there is to not hold on to the person you married, but realize that person is going to change over time and that you're going to change as well. And how do you navigate that change together?
Yeah. And along those lines, I tell people a lot. I know other people that have had long relationships, and some grow together and some grow apart. And so it's not uncommon for things to end after, 20 or 30 years because people grew apart and they didn't. I think they didn't acknowledge and didn't adapt to the person that they are now. They were kind of stuck on that. Well, you didn't used to be like this. Well, I should hope not. I was 20. Now I'm 50.
Right. And if you are feeling that stress in your relationship, it might very well be because you're not recognizing the change.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So
Yeah.
that's putting a name to the feeling that you're having. It's not easy anymore. We're disconnected. We're not aligned. Well, you're changing.
Yeah.
And are you recognizing that change in each other? Well, let's move on to another little bit, which is how do men and women perceive the work of what it takes to nurture a relationship differently? And again, anytime we go into a his perspective, her perspective, where we're talking gender-based roles, we're talking in very generals, right? Clearly not every man is this way. Clearly not every woman is this way. Melissa does not like absolutes. So when you hear there are no good men, she's like, there are some. And when she hears this always, she's like, not always. So we're not saying this is 100% gender-based. All right, so let's start talking about, as a guy, what are some of the things that I think that I bring to a relationship or have brought to our relationship that maybe at times have not been top priority of like, oh yeah, that's something we really do. And I think we could go down the laundry list of like tasks we do. And that's not really what we're talking about. We're talking about bigger things that sort of happen in a relationship. Now, I think one of the things in our dynamic is when we had kids, you chose to stay home.
Mm-hmm.
We chose to have you stay home, work, raise the kids for a while.
Yeah.
And that put me in a sole provider role for a period of time. And I think it's really clear to go, oh, you go to work and you do the earning, in that case, very clear cut. But I think the emotional toll of sort of being a sole earner and providing a foundation for your family or your relationship is something that I definitely perceived as part of like working on our relationship, where I don't know that you would necessarily consider that a relationship thing, but when you're providing and you're giving a financial base to something, or the woman's doing that, whoever's giving that financial base, that is clearly work on the relationship in my mind. Another thing that comes to mind there is that, sort of related to that and very specific for us, is that there are things that it takes just to run your house and to do the planning. One of the things that obviously everybody has to deal with is finances. And we have had joint finances since we were married, and we were married when we were dirt poor. So everything we have earned and together has always been our money. We're not a late in life marriage where you might have more complex and bigger decisions. Ours was, hey, you want to combine finances? Sure. I'll put my nickel with your nickel and we're off to go.
We have 2 nickels.
Yeah, exactly. But I think there was a very long period of time there where I would do our investment planning and I would do our, the actual tasks of managing the household budgets and stuff. And it's only in the last 10 to 15 years where we've gotten way more intentional about you knowing everything that we're doing financially and being much more involved in it, because you should. Because A, if I drop dead, you need to be able to do all this stuff. But B, we're way more powerful and good when we do it together. Harken back to the inked moment. We were, at the time that we sort of had that, I had that draw to improve in our finances. One of the things was we weren't working together. We were on budgets and we were doing things, but we were very much siloed in how we were putting our money into practice. And that was one of the big changes was, no, we've got to align and we've got to do this. So before that, I would say that was something that was a role I did. Maybe not the man's role, but in this case it was, that I did that was an unseen. So early on in our relationship, or even still today, are there things that you do that you deem as taking care of and nurturing the relationship that typically historically women have done in a relationship?
Yeah. Women often do the emotional labor in a relationship, noticing when something is off, bringing it up, talking about it. On a more practical level, the things that I felt I did, you were busy doing being the primary breadwinner and bringing home the money, which I acknowledged as a thing. But I did more of I want to say, not that making money isn't family oriented, but family oriented type stuff. For example, hey, your dad's birthday's coming up. Would you like me to pick something up? Do you have any suggestions? If not, I'll just take care of it. Another one that I thought of that I don't know how much you acknowledged whenever we traveled or anything, I was the one responsible for getting the girls ready. So you packed your stuff for wherever we were going. And in the early days, we were just going back to see family in Oregon. But I packed my stuff and the girls' stuff. And so I was kind of in charge of and took the responsibility for the things involving our family as a whole. But that also contributed to our relationship as well.
Yeah, it's funny because this is a pretty good example, actually, because who planned the airline travel, who got the rental cars, who planned the, like so those, I think that's a really good example of it takes both sides to do it. And I might not have acknowledged your packing work, but I also don't know that you would have necessarily acknowledged getting the rental cars ready and getting the and making sure they had car seats for when we went there. Cause we don't live there. So we gotta have car seats, I think that's a very family oriented one, but there's probably lots of examples. Planning date nights. I think you probably took the bulk of making sure we did date nights often and maybe even picking the restaurants and doing that sort of stuff. And I would just show up and have dinner.
And it had nothing at all to do about the fact that I was home all day with the girls and needed to get out. No, but that's a relatively common thing. I see it with the women in my practice, that they're the ones, and eventually they've gotten a little bit that's a heavy burden when you're the only one doing. Same with the finances or being the primary breadwinner. When it's like, I didn't really think about that pressure that was on you to make enough money that I could stay home with the girls. I really didn't. I mean, obviously,
it helped that I was making enough money that you could do that.
Absolutely.
Right. If I had not been making enough money for you to do that, then you would have very quickly acknowledged that that was an issue.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think these are the hidden things that, and this has maybe turned into a little less of a gender look at this thing and more of what sort of happened for us. Because I think, especially today, you've got a lot more women who are maybe earning more than their husbands. So like that's a primary earner issue and then versus a stay-at-home parent issue. Okay, so we just did a little bit of a touching on how men and women sometimes perceive the effort of a relationship differently, that sort of unseen stuff. I think one of the things that we have definitely gotten better at, and a lot of couples do but don't recognize, is that effort, making an effort, putting intentional actions into your relationship is maybe the best form of love. Like you're just showing up and you're being very intentional and you're putting in effort. Let's talk about some of the efforts how did we put effort into our relationship when we hit that time when we were working, you bought our house and, we're disconnected. Let's talk about what effort looks like today.
Okay. You want to start with that? Because I have a great example because we're talking here about grand gestures versus just daily effort that we put in. I remember a grand gesture that you did, and it was at the beginning. And then, I know where it went, how our relationship progressed after that.
Sure. I don't do grand gestures anymore. So I'm curious to see which one this is. What grand gesture did I do?
Okay. Grand gesture. I believe I was pregnant at the time. And I had recently got a new car, new to me. And
I don't know where this is going. This is interesting. Let's go. Where's this going?
I was going, you couldn't make it because you had to work. I was going on a trip with my family of origin. So mom and dad and my brother and sister and their families. And we were heading on vacation. Well, I had to drive from our house out in the country to my parents' house. And I just left my car there. And I went with them. I think we went to Sun River maybe. Anyway, we went on this vacation. Anyway, while I was gone, Michael took my car. And the car had come with a crappy radio, stereo system.
I do remember doing
this. You took my car. And when I got back a week later, I get into my car, exactly where I left it at my parents' house. I get back in my car. I look, there's a brand new stereo system. And I was like, obviously I knew where that came from, but I was like, oh my gosh, that is so darn sweet. I didn't ask him. It was a car to me. And so I was happy with whatever it had, but it was a pretty bad stereo system. And you did that. To me, that's a grand gesture. And I view that as something that people do in the early stages, the honeymoon stage. Less so. It's like those things aren't needed. I'm putting that in quotes. Needed as that was a way for you to show me that you love. Now on the daily, you show me, and it's the little things, the day-to-day things, and I see it, and I don't have to think twice about it.
Yeah, interesting. I think the thing about grand gestures is they don't come as often, right?
Mhm.
So I think we do still do grand gestures. Now I'm going to be on the spot to try to think of what the last great, grand gesture was. But I think we do still do those at times. But to your point, yeah, that's really important is that the daily stuff comes way more often. And I think that's really the less glamorous, but the more important.
Absolutely. I put more stock in the day-to-day. The grand gesture was nice. That was awesome, and I get to tell that great story, right? But if you were somebody that
Right.
didn't show me you love me the rest of the days of the year, I don't care about that.
So what does the effort of daily connection look like for us? I mentioned it a few minutes ago.
Mhm.
We are very, well, here, let's start before that. So this is something we added just 5 years ago, which sounds like, oh, it's 5 years ago. Well, we've been married 30 years. So just 5 years ago is
Right.
pretty darn recent in
Mhm.
our relationship. When I get up in the morning, I tend to get up before you do.
Yeah.
And I get dressed and I head out and start work a little bit before you do. And I give you a kiss every morning before I go now.
Yep.
I didn't do that for years and years and years, maybe because life was busy or whatever, or I don't know, or sleep schedules were different. But that's a small little way to start our day. That's
And I just want to make it a little bit more specific. It's so very intentional because my side of the bed is not on the way out the door. So he comes on the other side of the bed. If he just was ready to go and head out to work, he just goes straight, and he has to actually intentionally walk around the other side of the bed, kiss me, and then walk back to where the door is. And so it's not like a fluke of, oh, there's my wife. I'll give her a quick kiss on the way out. It's an intentional effort.
sure.
And I see that. And I don't know. It makes me feel loved. It
The
really
small
does.
gestures, because I mean, you
Right.
make it sound like I'm crossing the Delaware or something with George Washington, but literally I'm walking around the edge of the bed. But yes,
No,
I get your point.
right?
It's not
You
just
get it.
yeah, it's not just hey, I'm up, I'm going, and I'm starting my day. It's no, I'm taking a conscious moment, a beat to acknowledge. So I think that's an example. We are very intentional with our daily check-in. It's walking
Mhm.
the dog. Again, this is a somewhat recent one as well too, because before COVID, before we were both work from home, walking the dog was a daily chore and one of us would go do it and be
Mhm.
out and about. Now, again, we did have kids in the house too. So the dynamic sort of changed to being empty nesters where you had less time pressures in the evening. And now it's a daily, very intentional.
Mhm.
And the walk sort of has a format to it. It's check in with each other, and then it's a look ahead of what you got tomorrow or what you got coming up. And it's a check in of, hey, is anything bothering you? Anything that, then it hits on the other subjects of the day. The how's the family doing? Have you heard from the girls? That
Mhm.
sort of stuff. But it always has those sort of handful of check in elements to it. Got any other examples of things we do that are daily effort?
There are little things. I think you notice them, but I'll share them anyway. But Michael doesn't ask for much, especially when it comes to like food. But there are things I know he likes. Raw nuts. I know it's random, but
It's not random. I don't eat sugar
not
very much.
roasted,
So,
not salted, raw nuts.
right.
Raw, just plain nut, no oils, no nothing. And those are expensive little buddies, and they don't go on sale very often. But I notice when he's running out or has ran out, and I make sure I get that for you. Doesn't matter if it's on sale because you ask for so little, and you have several of those things that I'm pretty sure you notice. Oh wow, that wasn't in there yesterday. Or you'll say, "Hey, I think I'm out of Tabasco sauce," and I'll say, "Oh, just pick that up today." You're like, "Oh, thanks."
Right. Domestic examples, I guess, is what we're
Yeah.
talking to there, right? We do have a little bit of traditional sort of separation on some of these things. I mow the yard and take care of the sort of outside tasks, partially
Allergies.
allergies. Yeah, exactly. I wouldn't say you like grocery shopping as a thing, whereas you do like cooking. So you do majority
No,
of
I
our
do
cooking.
like grocery shopping actually.
All right, so
I,
she likes grocery
I'm
shopping.
apparently freaking that because my clients are like, "Oh my gosh, such a chore." I'm like, "I like grocery shopping. I like getting deals."
Yeah,
That's what it comes out to.
fair
It's
enough.
it's a dopamine hit.
Yeah, so I do notice that the food does not magically appear in the pantry, but I do notice that the things that my comfort foods, raw nuts are probably not my comfort food,
Right, but
but the point is the things that I need are there. Yeah. I had a funny story that happened just a couple weeks ago. You were traveling, you were off with, I think it was your trip with Taylor.
yeah.
And Alexa, one of my daughters, was over. We have adult daughters, 26 years old, twin girls. And she was over watching a hockey game. We had another buddy of mine over who was watching the game, and he walks into the house and he goes, "Ooh, it smells good in here." And I'm like, that is the wallflowers that are in the wall. I have nothing to do with that. But it is one of those daily efforts of like, you really intentionally make our place nice and comfortable. And, the things that I would not go out of my way to take care of those things are things that you do that make our home warm and comfortable and nice and an inviting place. And so when you have somebody else walk in and go, "Oh, it smells really good in here," and it's like, yeah, okay, that's a wallflower.
I have nothing to do with that, right? Is that what you told them? That's all. That's all Melissa.
That's all Melissa.
Yeah. And one of the little things I do, which you probably don't even know, I try to put. There's one right outside Michael's office, and I try to put a more masculine scent.
I only notice that because I hear you say that occasionally.
I'm not doing florals or whatever. Like the next one, when that one runs out, you're getting coffee and whiskey is the scent. And so I try to put, so that it's just these little things that you're not going to notice.
Yeah, so
really,
these are the efforts of making a nice environment, making a nice relationship, showing the little bits that you care about. Our puppy dog just walked into the room, so she's going to go lay down there, hopefully. It's late. She wants dinner, so she's begging for some food. But I think we got the point here that, like, don't discount the value of effort and paying attention to your partner's likes and needs and doing, because effort is a way of showing love.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on. Before we do that, what does effort look like in your relationship? We've given some very minute personal examples here. Let us know in the comments, how do you show effort in your relationship? We've talked about the small little things, the effort, versus the big grand gestures. I think another distinction that's worth exploring is maintaining your relationship versus growing your relationship. We are both of growth mindsets in our personal life, in our individual lives, in my work life, your work life, in our finances. We're very big into the sort of achieving and growing and getting better at that. And I think many relationships are in maintenance mode. They're just sort of going along. And there can be lots of reasons why they're just going along. I think a main reason, or often a reason, is you're comfortable. Like maintenance is easy. It's just you're kind of cruising along. Growth can be challenging and difficult. So let's talk a little bit about the difference in general between maintenance and growth in your relationship and how we sort of navigated that. Have we done it intentionally, or have we stumbled into it? Where are we?
That's a good question. I don't know. Because I would say now is intentional. Earlier on, maybe stumbling in that it just kind of.
I would say we stayed in maintenance mode for a very long time.
Yes.
And I think when we had young kids, maintenance/survival mode, however you want to name that, was probably part of it, right?
Yeah.
I think we had a couple years there without kids, and that was sort of the easy cruising time.
Yeah.
Didn't take a lot of, everything was new and building and easy there, right? And I think we hit a level where we had the kids, and then went into sort of a maintenance, managing twins, survival mode.
Yeah.
So I think I agree. Early on, it was definitely maintenance mode.
Yeah. And I don't know, would you say that moment you mentioned earlier about the coming home, about the finance, was that a acknowledging that we're in the maintenance mode, but we want more than that for us, for our relationship? We want to grow. We just don't want to maintain. We want it to be more.
Yeah, I think looking back, we can name that change. It's super easy to name it looking back. And it started as a financial change where we built a lot of synergy together in finances, but it didn't take it a whole lot longer to go, well, when you build a financial foundation that's solid for each other, with each other, that the natural extension is your relationship is going to improve. And if it didn't take it was a very intentional move for us to realize, wait a minute, if we leaned in and we really focused on our finances together, well, shit, we can apply that to many other areas. And did it change how we started relating with each other? Absolutely. Well, our communication got better because if you're going to make very tough financial decisions, you better communicate about them.
Right. You have to talk about it. And that's not always comfortable.
Right. And this is our tip jar time to where communication is one of those driving pieces we always talk about. But I think one of the first intentional moves from just maintaining happened in our finances.
Yeah.
And it just spilled over into
I
other
was just
areas.
going to say, I think it gave us momentum. We identified that as something we wanted to do. We started work on it. It was working, right? At
Right.
least at first, I might not have been 100% on board.
You
But
weren't, but that's fine.
But once I got on board and I started seeing the debt go down, my college loans go down, all that go down. Oh, it got exciting. And that's probably why I like the grocery shopping so much. I learned at that time, I used to cut coupons for hours. I even made the girls cut coupons. I would identify which ones. And, kindergarten, right? They give them scissors. They teach them
Got
how
to
to cut
practice
one.
scissors.
Right.
I don't even
Yes.
know if kids need scissors today, but how are you going to cut your coupons if you didn't have your scissor skills? So.
Right, exactly. And so so that gave us, I believe that was the starting point to, well, what else, could be, things are good, but could they be better? And what else would we like to work on?
And then I think for us, another time that we really got rewarded for having leaned in was both our daughters have muscular dystrophy. We went through a very arduous sort of medical diagnosis time when the girls were 13. So we're talking about 13 years ago now. So that's 17, 18 years into the marriage. So we're probably 4 or 5 years, 3 or 4 years into our journey of let's fix our finances, let's get more intentional. I think we were in a much better relational position after that 5 years of focus, that when the medical stuff came, we were solid, and it gave us the ability to focus on the family crisis and not focus on a relational crisis or a financial crisis at the same time. So we got rewarded for having done that. And I think now, again, it's easy to name it looking back. And I think a lot of people don't even realize that they're just coasting in a maintenance period.
Right.
And if you have that epiphany and you have that success and that movement, it sort of gets a little addictive and you want to push it into other areas.
Right.
And I think that's what it is. So I don't think a lot of people feel that, but hopefully they get traction in one of those areas. And once you do, then you can put that in others.
Yeah. But I know enough people that I've seen in my practice that don't realize there's another level, that you hit maintenance. Hey, things are pretty good. And that's where they kind of stop, not realizing that there's a whole nother level if you go for growth in addition to that.
Yep.
Maintenance.
So let's close this segment with 2 real intentional things that we do that we would label as growing mindset versus maintenance. You want to give an example?
Right. Intentional. We are intentional about having planning meetings at certain times of year. It's often around our anniversary. I know we definitely do it on our anniversary. It's a momentous occasion, and we look at, okay, what have we done recently? What does the next year look like? What would we like? We'll do it at the beginning of every year, January 1, right around there. It's usually a little bit before that because you have that big break for work. But that's another time where we talk about finances. We talk about family things. What does any family changes look like in the new year? The year that Taylor was getting married and all of those things. Those are intentional, and that's something that we do. There are specific times of the year that we do this.
We do it twice a year. Our anniversary happens to fall about halfway through the year.
Yeah.
And the holiday, end of the year, we always do that. And those are the most formal sort of intentional. Like, hey, let's put some dates on the calendar, things we're aiming for, some real numbers, what's it going to take to do it. We're very diligent about monthly budgeting and planning and investing, but this is sort of the longer vision. And it always has a retrospective piece of it. What did we accomplish last year? Where are we now that we weren't 5 years ago? Because if you don't recognize how much progress you've made, it's really hard to keep the momentum going forward. So we're very intentional about looking back and going, wow, it was just 3 years ago we were doing X, Y, and Z. Now we're here. And that's financially, family, relationships. It's all those sort of things. I think another thing that we do that's very intentional, and this doesn't happen at a set frequency, but we have those life vision check-ins. We're nearing retirement age, potentially. We have some big goals around some travel and some things like that. So they're sort of vacation planning. We are also starting to talk about what does retirement look like. If we get to a phase where you're retiring or I'm retiring, well, what does our life look like in that phase? Those are less tactical and more just making sure that we're aligned in a vision for where we're going. And I think those are the two real tangible things we do that I would consider growth mindset, not maintenance mindset with our relationship.
I would agree.
All right. Well, that brings us to our final segment, which is our pen to paper segment. We like to close every episode with an action for you to take that you can do today to put into your relationship, your marriage, something that will activate around today's topic. Today, in our pen to paper segment, we like to give you a practical challenge or reflection to help you write your own lasting marriage story. Today, we've explored why the right person still requires hard work. Today's exercise is to do an effort audit. So, Melissa, what is an effort audit, and how can someone listening today put that into action in their relationship?
Identify 3 intentional things you've done in the past month that showed that you were putting genuine effort into your relationship.
Okay.
These aren't obligations. Making you dinner, that doesn't count as effort. I mean, it's something I always do.
Well, it doesn't. You're definitely not obligated to do it. I can cook. Well, that came across as something that she has to make his dinner. No, you are not obligated to make my dinner.
I like to cook.
If you are the one who cooks, making dinner is not
that doesn't count as intentional effort into your relationship.
There we go.
Sorry
about
to
clarify.
And something that wasn't about logistics, not clarifying, okay, what's this week look like? That's just stuff you do.
Okay. All right.
So 3 things in the last month that took genuine effort. Something that took a real investment, that you put a real investment into your relationship. Write those down. Have your partner do the same. And then after you've done that, share. This is not about scorekeeping. It's not about, but there might be something on your significant other's list that you didn't recognize and vice versa. And you're like, oh, wow, I didn't know you did that. And then hopefully you can express gratitude for it. I like to do that. But and there's also sometimes people think their list is really long about things they did, and then they had troubles getting the 3. That's something to talk about. How much effort is each partner putting into the relationship? And you won't know that until you do your effort audit.
Makes sense. So reminder, effort doesn't mean big grand gestures. Effort is a very foundational way of showing love. What effort are you putting into building your relationship? So do your effort audit. That's a hard one to say.
It is effort audit. Say it 5 times fast.
To help with this, I think you've created a spreadsheet for them or a worksheet for them.
Yep.
Yeah. So links in the bio, links in the description to go ahead and download your effort audit worksheet.
Yep.
That's today's pen to paper. Well, this brings us to the end of today's episode, where we discussed why the right person still requires work. We are 30 plus years in. We are definitely with the right person, and we are definitely working on our relationship. Yeah, I hope you are as well. With that, we want to thank you for joining us, and we invite you to connect with us by joining our free Pen and Ink community. Here we share free digital guides and the occasional updates to help you build your own long-lasting love. Click the link in the description or show notes. Also, remember to share a comment, ask a question, and let us know your thoughts on today's topic. And if you like this content, give us a like, leave a positive review, and remember to subscribe to get notified of future episodes. Thanks all.
Thank you.